The sign above the door read, Legacy Sound and Memorabilia, in faded gold letters, and the March light hit the Sunset Boulevard windows at the kind of angle that makes everything look more expensive than it already is. Inside, the air smelled like wood polish and old money. Gary Hollins was behind the glass counter reviewing an insurance document. He was 53, had been in the vintage instrument business for 22 years, and had developed the habit of knowing, within about 4 seconds of someone walking through his door, whether they were a buyer or a browser. He believed the skill had made him successful. In reality, it had made him comfortable, which is a different thing. The young man who came in around 11 fell into the browser category immediately. Baggy gray hoodie, beat-up Nikes, a baseball cap pulled low, thick black frames slightly too large for his face. He moved quietly, hands in his pockets, the way people do when they're not sure if they're welcome. Hollins glanced up, registered him, and went back to his document. The young man stopped in front of the 1958 Gibson Explorer. It was the kind of guitar that stops people. Natural Carina wood, that angular body that looks more like a weapon than an instrument, a headstock that breaks every convention Gibson had established up to that point. The tag below it read, 1958 Gibson Explorer, originally owned and played by Chuck Berry, $720,000, inquiries by appointment only. He reached out slowly, not to touch it. He kept his hand a few inches from the body, fingers slightly spread, like he was feeling its warmth without making contact. Hollins closed his folder and walked over. "Can I help you with something?" The young man pulled his hand back. "Just looking. Is this the real one? The Barry guitar?" "It is. Verified through 3 independent firms. There are photos of him playing it at the Fillmore in '69. I know that show." His eyes stayed on the guitar. "He played Carol as the opener. The recording's incredible." Hollins was not impressed. Plenty of people who couldn't afford things knew a lot about them. "Are you in the market for something at this level?" "I might be. What's the process?" Hollins looked at him for a moment. The hoodie, the cap, the worn shoes. He made his calculation. "Look, I don't want to waste your time or mine. This piece is in a different category. We typically work with established collectors on something at this price point. Private showings, documented financial capacity." He said it pleasantly, the way you decline someone at a restaurant when the list is full. "If you're interested in something more accessible, we have excellent early '60s pieces in the side room. Genuinely good instruments. Just a different investment level." The young man looked at him for a second. Something crossed his face. Not anger. More like a quiet recognition, like he'd heard a specific note he'd been expecting. "I understand," he said. He didn't move toward the side room. In the back corner of the shop, half hidden behind a floor-standing display of vintage amplifiers, a figure that Hollins had noticed when he arrived but paid little attention to shifted slightly. Wide-brimmed hat, dark sunglasses, a light surgical mask. West Hollywood in 2002. People wore strange things. Hollins had assumed he was a collector who wanted to browse without being approached. He'd left him alone. The figure had been standing very still for about 4 minutes. He wasn't still anymore. He came around the amplifier display slowly. He walked with the specific quality of someone who knows exactly where they're going, even when taking their time. He stopped next to the young man in the hoodie and said nothing immediately. He looked at the Explorer on the wall. Then he looked at Hollins. "I'd like to see that guitar." His voice was muffled by the mask, but there was something in the tone that made Hollins straighten up without knowing why. "Of course, sir. Do you have an existing relationship with our gallery?" "I don't believe we've—" "I'd like to see the guitar." Same tone. Not aggressive. Just finished. Hollins lifted the Explorer from its mounts. The figure in the hat took it with both hands, the way you handle something that belongs to a specific time. He turned it over once, ran his thumb across the edge of the body. Then he held it out toward the young man in the hoodie. "Play something." The young man blinked. "I'm sorry. You came in here because you wanted to hold this guitar. So hold it." Hollins started to object. The figure turned his head toward him, only slightly, and Hollins stopped. The young man took the Explorer and adjusted the weight across his forearm. Then he played 4 bars of something. Not showy, the kind of thing you play when you're feeling out an instrument's character, rather than demonstrating anything. A chord progression that moved somewhere and didn't quite resolve. But the tone that came out of that guitar was something that required you to stop whatever you were doing. He played for maybe 40 seconds. Then he stopped. The figure nodded once. Then he reached up and removed his sunglasses, then his hat, then, slowly, the mask. What happened to Gary Hollands's face in the next 2 seconds is hard to describe without making it sound theatrical. But the truth is, it wasn't theatrical at all. It was just a man suddenly understanding the size of his mistake. "I want to buy this guitar," Michael Jackson said. "Full price. I'll have the transfer arranged this afternoon." Hollins opened his mouth. "I'm not finished." Michael's voice didn't rise. It just became more exact. "I've been in the back of your shop for 20 minutes. I heard how you spoke to this young man. I heard you decide what he was worth before he said 3 words. He paused. "I was 11 years old the first time someone in this business made that same decision about me. A man in a suit told my father I was charming, but probably a one-album act. He said it in front of me." He paused again. "Think about that the next time someone comes in here wearing a hoodie." Hollins was nodding before Michael finished. The kind of nodding with no real thought behind it, just reflex. Michael turned to the young man, who had been standing very still with the Explorer still in his hands. "You play well," Michael said. "What's your name?" And here is where the story turns. The young man looked at Michael Jackson for a moment. Then he reached up and took off his glasses. Then his cap. Michael went quiet. Even without the context of the music industry, the face was one that most people on Earth would have recognized by 2002. The jaw, the eyes, the specific quality of his presence, even when he was actively trying not to have one. "Justin," he said. "Justin Timberlake." Michael looked at him. Not with surprise exactly. More like a recalibration. The way you adjust when something you thought was straightforward turns out to have another variable. He was quiet long enough that the silence said something on its own. Then, "I didn't know that." "I know," Justin said. "That doesn't change anything I said to him." Michael glanced once toward Hollins, then back. "But I need you to understand something. What happened in this room happened before I knew who you were. Hold on to that." Justin looked down at the guitar in his hands. He'd been 20 years old when his group hit #1. He'd spent the years since being perceived in a very specific way. As a product, as a former member of something, as a face attached to a machine that had already run its course. He had walked into this shop in a hoodie precisely because he was exhausted by being seen before he opened his mouth. And the only person in the room who had treated him as a musician, without knowing one thing about him, was the one person whose opinion about music meant more to him than almost anyone else alive. He held the Explorer back toward Michael. "I can't let you buy this. I already decided to buy it. Michael," he said the name carefully, "this is your call. But I want to ask you something first." He looked at the guitar. "What are you going to do with it?" Michael looked at it too. He was quiet in the way that means someone is thinking about something specific rather than buying time. "I don't know yet," he said. They left Legacy Sound and Memorabilia 40 minutes later. Hollins had said very little after the initial exchange. There was nothing much left to say. Outside, Sunset Boulevard in March was flat and white. Traffic moved slowly. The world was entirely ordinary on the other side of that door. About half a block from the shop, they heard it. A kid sitting on an overturned milk crate next to a parking meter, an open guitar case on the sidewalk in front of him, with a folded piece of cardboard inside. Music school fun. Maybe 17 years old. He was playing a Fender with a crack running from the input jack halfway up the body, held together with electrical tape. He was playing it like it wasn't cracked. He was working through a chord progression that kept returning to something unresolved, like he hadn't found the end of the idea yet, but couldn't stop reaching for it. Michael stopped walking. Justin stopped beside him. The kid's name was Marcus Webb. He'd moved to Los Angeles from Compton 8 months earlier after his father died, and he sat on this stretch of Sunset 3 mornings a week trying to save enough for 1 semester at the conservatory. He didn't notice them at first. When he looked up, he saw 2 men in ordinary clothes watching him, nodded the way street musicians do, and kept playing. Michael set the guitar case down on the sidewalk. He opened it. He lifted the Explorer out and walked the 3 steps to Marcus and held it out parallel to the ground. The way you offer something you actually mean. Marcus stopped playing. He looked at the guitar, then at the man holding it. The mask was off. The hat was off. Marcus Webb was 17 and had grown up listening to Off the Wall on a cassette his father kept in the car. And there are some faces you know before you know them. Sir, It belonged to Chuck Berry, Michael said. He would want it played. Marcus didn't take it right away. Something in his face went through a small private process. Then he reached out and took it. He played one chord. The sound of that guitar on open sunset air, amplified by nothing, was still different from every other guitar he'd ever held. Fuller. Like it already knew what it wanted to say. Michael watched him. Then he reached into his jacket and took out a small spiral notebook. The kind from any drugstore. He wrote something, tore out the page, and placed it in Marcus's guitar case under the cardboard sign without a word. Marcus looked at it after they'd gone. A phone number, and below it, 3 words in a handwriting he would later recognize from liner notes he'd been studying since he was 9 years old. Keep reaching for it. Justin had watched all of this from a few steps back. When Michael turned and they started walking, they covered about half a block in silence. Then Justin said, "You still didn't know who I was when you told me to play." "No," Michael said. "So why did you do it? All of it?" Michael walked a few more steps. "Because he had already decided what that guitar deserved based on who he thought you were." He didn't slow down. "The guitar doesn't know who you are. I didn't either. What I heard for those 40 seconds was enough." They reached the corner. A car was waiting. Justin stood on the sidewalk and sat with the fact that the most significant thing anyone in the music industry had said to him in the past year had been said to a stranger in a hoodie, with no intention of it reaching him at all. "Thank you," he said. Michael looked at him. Not warmth exactly. More like recognition between two people who understand the same specific thing about a loneliness that fame doesn't fix and sometimes makes worse. "Go make the record," Michael said. He got in the car. Justified came out in November 2002. In an interview the following spring, Justin was asked what had shifted during that period, what had made the record feel possible. He said something the interviewer found slightly cryptic and moved past. He said, "Someone heard me play without knowing it was me. That turned out to matter more than I expected." Marcus Webb enrolled at the Los Angeles Conservatory of Music in the fall of 2003. He graduated in 2007. He has worked as a session guitarist and producer in this city for 17 years. He has never sold the Explorer.